Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Learning Future podcast. Today, it's my absolute delight to have tracked down this wonderful human being that I've been hearing a lot about. For many years, her name is Michelle Culver, and she's the founder of the Rithm Project, which activates young people to rebuild and evolve human connection in the age of AI. If there was anything important right now, Michelle, it's got to be something like this. Michelle has really led at the forefront of human flourishing for over 2 decades, working at the intersection of equity and innovation. She began her career as a 5th grade teacher in Compton, and she played a pivotal role in building Teach for America's first national program in the early days, before now it was this kind of global movement. It became the executive vice president of regional operations, and she oversaw a huge team, 14 EDs, 300 staff members, which were impacting over 200,000 students. Michelle serves on a range of different boards. She is married to a Salesforce futurist where they imagine futures where their 2 daughters and all young people don't just thrive, but actively shape the world around them. She's also a proud Pahara Fellow with the Aspen Institute. And you also created the Reinvention Lab, which is Teach for America's research and development engine, which is still going. And we spoke to Sunana not long ago on this podcast, Michelle.
She's the best.
Yes, well, it's the work continues. Thank you for joining us on the Learning Future podcast.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
I just was enjoying our pre-chat a lot, kind of sharing stories about possibilities and kind of travel. But take us into the world of learning, which is somewhere where you clearly thrive. What is something that you're actively learning at the moment that's revealing itself to you?
Well, I keep learning again and again from young people. And in particular, I'll tell you something that really struck me. So we recently interviewed 27 young people about how they are using AI in relational ways.
Right.
And at the end of this, and because young people are not a monolith, they all had different answers with great nuance and sophistication. But at the end, we asked the question, what do you think adults are missing about this conversation? And they said almost some version of the same thing over and over and over again. And what they said was some version of, you're actively using this technology and we are not talking to you all about it because we can feel that adults are afraid. We can feel your fear. We can sense the shame and judgments coming. And so if you want to know the truth is we are experimenting it on and finding our way on our own, and we are not in conversation with you all about it. And that, you can imagine, is a really important learning for me that is continuing to shape and reshape our strategy and our relationships.
Do you think, let's take us into that a little bit more. One of the things that we notice in our work is that we have an internalized view of what education needs to be or of how learning happens. And of course, that's so guided by our own education, the generation in which we grew up. So if that's what we're missing today, what's the implication for us as educators?
Well, I'll actually channel one of the young people who took it a step further to say, by the way, not only can we feel your judgment and fear, but we actually have something to offer to this conversation. But don't forget, we are digital natives. This is more intuitive to us. And so we actually have something to offer you. And so I think in the spirit of your question, there's this really interesting exploration of the mindsets that we bring to who is expert and who is learner. And if we were really to just, I think, shake that off and approach this from we are all learners and we all have something to contribute to this important conversation about how AI is showing up in reshaping our lives, then I think we would cut to much more nuanced answers that really draw from the assets and wealth of perspective that so many generations are bringing to the table at this moment.
It's like obviously, but for me, something like co-agency just becomes so implicated today.
Yes.
It's like, for me, and the role of an instructor or a chalky or a teacher to somehow kind of be calcified as I am the knower primarily. I think we are so beyond that world, as our young people tell us, like
That's
rise of the autodidact. If you're a good self-learner, as compelling as I think I might have been in the classroom, you're going to be able to learn faster if you're driving your own learning. So it's just a fascinating tipping point, I think. I know that you're doing some really interesting work at the Rithm Project. Tell us about the big idea that you're really exploring and creating with that work.
Thanks for asking. So, at the Rhythm Project, we're asking ourselves really about what it is that young people are going to need in order to both rebuild and evolve human relationships in this moment of AI and AI disruption. And so that inquiry, I think, is leading us to ourselves have to be fast, regular learners since the context keeps changing and we are all emerging with, again, these sort of sophisticated and distinct answers that are all pieces of this important moment and puzzle.
Tell us more about the relational bit, because we've had a few interesting conversations on here with Isabel Howe, for example, from
I
Stanford.
love Isabel.
He's brilliant.
She's
And
brilliant.
we're just talking about like the role of, do we say love in education?
Yes.
That level of vibrational energy, connectedness, social connectedness, which
Mm,
just is such a predictor of life satisfaction. And we know the rise of the companion bot, or the companionship and therapy is the number one use case for Gen AI at this point in time. And so what are you discovering in that inquiry? Like
mm.
how can, potentials and pitfalls, how are you seeing positive emerging use cases about how this technology helps us connect and rebuild relationships? And where are you also seeing kind of the inverse of that, which is perhaps
Yeah.
it being replacing human connectedness in a way that might actually not be, or ultimately really healthy or towards the thriving of a human.
There's so much in your question. I'll start actually just
Yes, there is.
by helping folks even just access what we mean by companion bots, because for some of us, that's probably really intuitive. And for others, that may not yet be, because it's certainly not the way many of at least the adults grew up connecting. So these companion bots are AI generated beings that work to create and foster emotional connection. And so they personify and replicate human relationships, although they're clearly not. And the reason why I begin there is because young people we see when we talk to them, they're both using these AI companion bots, and they're also using other Gen AI applications as thought partners, a place to vent about their emotions and feelings, a way to get someone to get the AI to help them think about a better text response to their boyfriend that they just offended, or the friend that left them unread that they're feeling some kind of feelings about and want to work through with an unbiased thought partner. So they are in some cases building an actual emotional attachment in a personified character or being, and other times they're just like a thought partner or resource, more like a tool to help them get back into relationship with other humans. And when you think about both of those use cases taken together, Common Sense Media put out a report that said 76% of young people are already doing this, and over half are regular users of AI in these relational ways. So when you start to unpack it, it's like, well, why? Well, actually, let me just say this. The reason this matters so much, aside from just the numbers, is it does really mark a shift. This is you and I right now, we are using technology to connect across the world. And so we are leveraging AI to relate to other people. And this moment marks the first time where we're not just connecting through technology, we're connecting with technology itself.
Right.
So there's not an actual human on the other side. It's a large language model. That's a massive shift in our human development. And so you have to wonder, well, why is this happening? What value is it adding to young people? And the truth is, it makes sense that they're drawn to this. First and foremost, when you really get under the why, they begin by talking about it's fun. They get to talk to Harry Potter. They get to play out a role play with a mafia boyfriend. They get to do all kinds of things that are just really about experimentation. And we've always seen young people are often the first to go to technology for experimentation, exploration, entertainment. So it begins often that way. And then what they start to uncover is that AI gives pretty good advice, actually. Oftentimes, they're able to bring things that really do matter to them, and the AI is available really whenever they want it. So, as when humans might be going to sleep or might be preoccupied with other things, this resource is available to them all the time. And
Mm.
so it's adding real value to young people. And then when you probe a little deeper, they describe and explain that it feels like a relief to be in a conversation, especially this is true for adolescents, but I think this is true for adults too, where you're not being judged. You don't actually have to worry what the other person is thinking about you, and you can just be with whatever is present for you. And they sometimes even go as far as to say, it's easier than talking to real humans in my life, or I don't actually have humans in my life, and small percentage, I actually prefer it to the humans in my life.
Mm.
So you see a real range. And I want to begin by opening that up because, again, we adults, and we should have some real caution and concern. And I do. It's part of my motivation right now is to try to get ahead of some of the risks that we can anticipate with this. But it's also some real benefits and value that young people are finding in this.
Yeah, great. Let's go like a layer deeper into that, Michelle, as
Okay,
well. Because I think
great.
the companion piece for me is it's so interesting because it really implicates what it means to be human and what is it
Hmm.
that leads us to live a life well lived.
Mm.
Including protective factors, which of course quality relationships are the greatest protective factor we have for not just lifespan but health span. So
Yes.
that's why I think the relational bit is just so interesting. And good teaching and learning is relational. It's not
Yes.
transactional. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We've always known
Yes.
this.
We know this.
So that also means, oh wow, it means we can learn potentially with using this as a use case. And Benjamin Bloom's Two Sigma problem paper has been like held up as like maybe now we'll be able to get the one-to-one model of instruction which increases achievement and now tightens the bell curve. Maybe this if everyone has a tutor in their pocket, we'll be able to get there. And Sal Khan and others, you know, OpenAI, Microsoft, everyone's playing with this idea. So I'd love you to take us into kind of the learning space about the implication for something like this. Now we have a
Mm.
companion that we might have a relationship with, always accessible, which means we don't have to put up our hand and wait. And so that's a positive thing. But of course, what are also the kind of the challenges or the potential risks that we must keep an eye on as we kind of embark into this new era?
Well, let me actually just first tell a story that gives a little bit of a glimpse into my worldview about learning, because even though I suspect that this is an extension of a lot of the conversations you've had with your listeners and audience, it's certainly not something we can take for granted. And so when I think about our current system, at least in the US, we see a largely one size fits all, fails most model. And so part of when I start to dream into what is an expanded view, it's informed in part by my own experience when I became a parent. So I moved from being a classroom teacher to becoming a parent. And I made a choice that surprised me to put my daughters into a school that really is designed to optimize for curiosity. And that's where the student is the co-architect of their education. That's their tagline. And what this looked like was my kindergartner showed up for school, and the first thing they did is they asked her what she wanted to learn. And this is also the case for what they do with the eighth graders and everything in between. And so, my daughter had just seen a recent community theater with us as a family. And so she said, I want to study plays. I want to study theater. So the first thing that they did is they took her to sit next to a female director while she was casting, so that Elsa, my daughter, could ask her questions about what she was doing in the context of the real world and in a role model that she could start to see herself in. And then they come back to school and they matched her with an older buddy, because again, she was little. And so this older buddy helped her find her own voice to write a play. And then she cast her peers and then directed and starred in this show. She's 5. And I sat in the audience and I wept. And part of the reason I was so moved was, of course, I'm like a proud mama. That's my girl. But part of it was a real moment of humility where I had been in the field of education already at that point for 20 years. And I had actually even helped to write some of the curriculum around having high expectations for all kids. And yet it had never occurred to me that a young person at 5 could already do what I was witnessing this child do. And the reason I say all of that is, and the best part was at the end, without adult intervention, she stood on the stage and then the kids in the audience raised their hands and then asked her questions about her process. And she reflected on what about the journey she struggled with and when she was surprised. And the reason I say this is because it unlocked this point of view. That's not to say that model is the model for all kids, but it started to help me realize that we weren't asking the right questions about why young people are learning. And then, of course, all the subsequent questions about what are the outcomes and what are the methods we're bringing and with whom are we learning? Is it a person in the real world and an older buddy, or is it just a teacher in a traditional context? And I share all of this because what I witnessed this model do, and again, there are many ways to answer these bigger questions about why, what, where, with whom, how you make this available and equitable for all kids. But what it really unearthed for me was that when we put that sort of young person in the driver's seat, as you've talked about so many times, where they're really driving their own learning, it's such a powerful unlock for all of the other things that come from that. And in this moment, to get to where you started, I just keep thinking AI is going to be such a profound accelerant of the models that our kids are sitting in. So
Hmm.
if we are teaching young people that they just need to master the content and regurgitate it in order for performance to be accelerated, then AI can do all that for you, frankly. It's like, why learn? Like, what is the point of learning if that's the model? This tool is going to do it faster than any teacher is going to be able to do it in a classroom. But if we really go to the heart of curiosity, then AI can be this profound unlock for their leadership, for their agency, for their curiosity, to help them accelerate, identify the questions that they want to pursue, accelerate and consider multiple different angles, synthesize lots of different perspectives, apply it in the real world. And so I just keep thinking the most important thing in this sort of construct of the future of learning is really doubling down on helping young people identify their own agency and curiosity. And AI then can become a powerful unlock for that model.
I love it. Thanks for taking us through that story. It's just such a great reminder that, it's like the truism. My teacher thought I was smarter than I was, so I was. What
Mm,
young people are really capable of, it is quite significant. And I think as soon as we put them into the sausage maker model, to use Yong Zhao's language,
yes.
and we've got some lovely sausages. It's just such an
Yeah.
interesting moment to think about. Yeah, and I really think we are in that kind of in the kind of what the chasm is in front of us. I think, Michelle, we have to leap this chasm and have the kind of implementation dip of moving into a new paradigm. AI I see as perhaps as transformational as the invention of electricity, as a
Yes.
horizontal, general purpose technology, because of course it then embeds into every other tech vertical and accelerates it. And to your point, I hadn't thought about it in those terms as clearly. I really like that reflection. It will accelerate whatever the model is that we have.
Yeah.
So but we might end up running faster to the wrong destination
Yes.
than really orienting ourselves to turn towards the future and go, okay, well, actually, this I think, especially competency rich with high quality content, but really making sure the balance. Or the other piece I love from Charlie Fidel, who's been on this podcast too, is it's not expertise; it's expertise and transfer.
Yeah, that's
What are
right.
you going to do with what you know?
Yeah,
Show me
that's
what
right.
you know. Make it authentic assessment.
I love that.
If a teacher is marking something that only they are seeing, first of all, the teacher's working way too hard. What a lost opportunity for there to be a
Hmm.
real audience. Fascinating. I have a question for you about cognitive struggle. And it's one that I grapple with, Michelle, when I look at young people using this tech. And so the genie's out of the bottle. It's not as if we need to, bans, etc. It's not going to work. And we've worked with a few systems here in Australia that have, South Australia has a thing called EdChat, which is a guardrailed LLM, which students use in
Hmm.
their classrooms and teachers use for their planning. And so that's kind of some forward thinking here in Australia. But the thing that I keep reflecting on is the difference between using AI as a crutch and using AI as an extend, like someone that extends your learning, as something that extends your learning. And
Mm,
I don't know if you came across the MIT study that came out a couple
hmm.
of months ago. I mean,
Yeah.
wasn't peer reviewed, 54 students, so small sample. But there's something about how we help our young people struggle more
Yes.
with this tech, not struggle
Yeah.
less,
Yeah.
because learning is grappling. That's what the learning process is. So
Beautifully
where do you
said.
sit in that kind of piece around cognition and
Hmm.
making sure that these tools are actually extending thinking for learners, not just replacing thinking?
Well, maybe because I think you just did such a beautiful summary of that current state. I maybe just extend it to say, I think there's another piece of this that's related that we're not talking about as much in education that I think we should be, which is to say, I also think we need that kind of productive friction relationally. So We often think, oh my gosh, that conversation was so uncomfortable, or that person rejected me, or I'm so embarrassed because I did something that didn't go the way I wanted, or I didn't have the beautiful response in the moment, or that person was making eye contact in a way that made me uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do. There's so many real moments of discomfort that happen in general. And for young people today, when that happens, often their felt sense and the way they make meaning of that is that there's something wrong. There's a problem here. I'm not good at this. I shouldn't try it again because it's wrong. It's bad. And I think what we want to try to do is to say those feelings of discomfort in human relationship, that's actually part of growing. That's part of discovering. That's part of serendipity. It's like the moments that your heart is broken open and then has to heal back together. And those moments where you get to uncover a point of view that you just wouldn't have normally considered, even if it was so uncomfortable to sit through. All of these just ways of being together. I think increasingly we are defaulting to technology that allows us to not have to feel that discomfort. And
Mm,
in doing so, we are creating more and more isolation and more um, missed opportunities to nourish ourselves and the collective, even if it's hard to get there. And so I think that matters again. And you said this earlier, but just to underscore, I think this is part of the work of teachers
mm,
because we often think our jobs as educators is to, again, transfer knowledge. But I think in a world where we are increasingly more disconnected from each other, and yet we know it has a disproportionate effect on both the academic outcomes you're going to see in the classroom, that person's health and well-being, their ability to be successful in the workforce, or frankly, even to have the social skills to be able to land that first job, because social capital is still so relational. And then to have a thriving democracy where people to come together across differences and disagreements to still create a shared collective. And I just think that's the work of teachers right now, is helping our kids build that kind of resilience and practice, even when it's uncomfortable, in being together. And in doing so, we'll both help our learners be more effective in the classroom and we'll be building the kind of families and communities and societies that I think our young people long for.
I'm so enrolled in that vision, Michelle. Honestly, it's like, sign me up. I really am. There's something I'm reflecting on a lot at the moment is aliveness.
Yes.
I know it's an interesting thing to say. It's a bit kind of esoteric. It's like, what does that mean? It feels a bit fluff. But aliveness, you see these people who are just in their life. They're popping. They're like
Yeah.
dynamic. And I think the same thing happens when we're kind of we enter micro flow state as well. And a great learning experience helps young people tap into that. They're just so in that moment
Yeah.
instead of, the inverse, which is kind of apathetic, dysregulated, even disassociated. And I just think, how alive are we as a group of teachers? How alive are we as a school?
Yes.
That's why the like living system stuff. I just am like, is our school a living system? Is
Yes.
it growing, or is it just like a machine that's kind of just holding itself together? I just think it's powerful metaphorical expressions. And so what brings you alive? Like why this work?
What you're saying, this brings me alive. I mean, it really does. It is really what's animating me. So just to say, I think again, our education systems often think our job is to educate the mind. And then therefore artificial intelligence is an efficiency tool to the sort of most prized intelligence. And yet part of what I'm hearing you say, and you said this so beautifully at the start of our call, even before we started recording, that there are these ancient technologies that tap into all of these other kinds of intelligences, whether that is, as you said earlier, breath or singing or ritual or immersing in nature. All of these are ancient technologies that have helped us become alive and, frankly, grieve and heal and learn and be productive and mark milestones and celebrate. All of these things have defined us for millennia. And so part of what really comes alive for me is creating the conditions where that gets to be nourished. And I get to then sort of bask in that, and that I'm more nourished to give back even more. And it's a sort of like an abundance of
Yes.
just good goodwill and good energy and love and aliveness. We just
Mm.
did this last week, and this feels very present for me because last week we did our third Human Connection and AI Summit. And it is this combination of youth leaders and educators and technologists and mental health professionals and researchers and philanthropists. So it is a cross-sector, multi-generational room. And when I first had this idea to do this, people I trust, I mean, these are people whose counsel I seek out, were like, don't do that. That is going to be a terrible convening because people don't even understand AI to begin with. And as soon as you bring that many diverse perspectives together, it's going to be too hard to create a shared foundation from which to have a meaningful conversation. You're going to just talk past each other. And I'm so glad I ignored that counsel because this moment to be able to bring all of these different people together and then to carve out time and space for these, again, the ancient intelligence, the other AI, all of these beautiful things that we know. So if you create a community where that kind of joy is palpable and everybody understands that they've got something to contribute, and you take time and space to connect to yourself and to each other and to this bigger world around us, it was such a aliveness. It was the best way to describe what we were all experiencing together. And then from that place, we can tackle any problem.
Mm.
It's like from that place, now we can build. From that place, now we can problem solve. From that place, now we can lead. And that's, I think, the foundation that young people long for. And when we start to tackle these very complex challenges that are around us every day in the news and in our lived experiences, that's the foundation from which to build. It's like, I really do believe in a future where, and this is the name of the Rithm Project. It's intentionally called the Rithm Project to signal, spelled like algorithm, RITHM, like the agency that we have in relationship with technology alongside the heartbeat of humanity.
Oh, that's great. Gives me some goosebumps over here.
Thank you.
Uh, I love it. I love it, especially like that. I heard once the body is the most extraordinary technology we have. And that's why in our work, I'm getting
Yeah.
so nerdy, Michelle, on psychophysiology
Hmm.
and kind of the vitality that underpins psychology, perhaps, all those factors. Again, as you said so beautifully, we're still educating the mind solely
Yeah,
without educating the heart, the gut, the body.
that's
And
right.
the point is, like, we've got great people like Annie Murphy Paul talking about the extended mind, distributed, situated, embodied
Yes.
cognition. And that's just the cognitive side, let alone the kind of mental health side and everything else that comes out of that. So yeah, it's just such an exciting moment to be working and learning, like in learning systems. Like it's just, there is so much going on. And your point of having the foundation of possibility, the energy of possibility,
Yes.
almost as a prerequisite for change ever to occur. I got a question for you about what is a question that you mull over the most? What is an unanswered question perhaps for you? Like almost a line of inquiry through your work, and you've had a phenomenal career of contribution so far already. So what is the that I really want to work out what might be going on in that space?
Yeah. Well, this builds from what you just said about the power of possibility. I mean, we often talk about the future as the future,
Yeah.
like predetermined, singular, like linear. Here
Hmm.
we are in the present, and here's the future. And I think so much of what we're starting to see happen in really powerful ways in the Rithm Project is the opening up of that paradigm to invite other people in to say, the future isn't predetermined. And so you young people, I'm not young anymore, but young people and we adults in partnership together, we can really still shape this into a future that you long for. And we can put technology to use in ways that accelerate that vision versus erode and undermine those human relationships that are so central in that. And one of the big questions I think I'm trying to figure out is we see over and over again when that invitation is extended, young people, they step up to it it is like, it is so
Like you're
easy
waiting
to
for us,
catalyze.
Michelle. Yeah.
It's so easy. So I think the real question I'm grappling with is like, how do we do that at scale? How do we broaden the number of people who can see themselves as a part of crafting and shaping the future, but do that in a way that doesn't minimize the magic of each one of those conversations and moment of reflection and depth and inquiry and values interrogation, because that is depth work. And yet we need that at scale. And so I think that's something I'm actively exploring right now.
Great. I think there's a number of us trying to figure that one out. Could it be, especially the kind of the human intelligence, artificial intelligence interface? I just think that is so interesting. What is catalyzing growth and what is preventing it, frankly?
Mhm.
And I think you've put this really beautifully. I've heard it described as the comfort crisis. And as a someone that spent some time in the design thinking space and at the D school, I'm really curious about the role of user centered design and
Mhm.
in creating, solving all your pain points, Michelle, so that have no pain, you have no reason to struggle. It's all just on an app. And then I'm like, well, what does it mean to be human? Isn't human about the struggle
Yeah.
is where we discover ourselves. So, and I think this is what we're seeing in the kind of even in the pedagogical space at the moment. It's like we want our young people to be getting to metacognition. We
Mhm.
absolutely want them to be thinking about their thinking, using their curiosity and their
Mhm.
discernment together to accelerate themselves in whatever direction they want to go in. And they might not know that. That's why it's not a linear path, but it's fascinating to be around this work.
I'll offer
Yeah,
two
please.
two methods I think we underutilize in education that I'm actively testing and exploring. Just to say, I am myself stepping into new methods after having been in the field for 25 years. So the first is immersive theater. So part of what I've grown to understand is that the same part of the brain that thinks about the future is the same part of the brain that gets activated when you're thinking about the past. Said another way, it's physiologically really difficult to imagine possible futures. And so one of the ways in which we're experimenting into that is in partnership with a group called Odd Knock Productions, who have helped us co-create these stories where we invite folks to time travel into the year 2040. And we step into a room and these actors and performers are there ready to engage you as though it is a birthday party in 2040, or you're
Wow.
signing up for a consumer product in 2040, or you are in a learning model in 2040. And you have a visceral experience of the parts of that you love and hate. And none of them are designed to be utopic or dystopic, but rather to create a possible possibility that provokes a reaction so that you can then step out of that room, come back to our current year, and then say, well, what about those possible futures do you want to pull towards you? What about that do you want to mitigate against? And then what does that call you to do today? And so the principle here is in part the arts and in part time travel, but really what it is about investing in collective imagination and that experiential learning that helps you to imagine the impact of our teaching down the road. And so I think that's one underutilized tool in our toolkit. And then the second, and this is just like stating the obvious, but it's just joy and play. And we do it so much with the early years with kids when they're little and we understand the intuitive value of games.
Yes.
But we ourselves are just trying to figure out, like, how do we create card decks and games that are going to foster debate and discourse and make it feel less scary to have disagreement and instead like a delight to
Mm-hmm.
uncover perspectives that are different from our own that help us recenter in our own values and leverage the power of others to help you recenter in what matters most to you and to make that like a joy-filled act instead of something that just feels utterly terrifying. So those are play, theater. I'm like on let's be a whole lot more creative these days in our
I
methods.
absolutely love it. It's it's what makes us come alive. Let's head in that direction
Yeah, that's right.
as much as possible. And I love, we actually do a very similar practice in some of our strategy work too, Michelle, about creating a museum of the future. And then, of course, and this was inspired by some of the Stanford D School work as well. And it's just phenomenal over there. Lisa K. Solomon, the futurist in residence. It's
Mm-hmm.
like this whole piece on, well, yeah, can you experience a speculative future that you've built? And then from that place, you can actually not design for it, but you can design from it. And that subtle change, I think, is like it opens up again the field of possibility rather
That's right.
than the field of I need to solve all the problems that are around me today with my current level of thinking, which,
And I have
you
to
know,
I have to give credit to, Stuart Candy, who is the Australian futurist who inspired this work for me, who's also got a chance to
great.
collaborate with Lisa, I believe, as well. So,
Amazing. I have to check him out.
yeah.
Michelle, it's been so wonderful to jam with you on these ideas. I've got one final question,
Okay.
and it really is a kind of a synthesis of the current moment that you're in. It's to say in a kind of sentence or two, what is a take-home message that you would like to offer the
Hmm.
hardworking educators and leaders and innovators that are listening to this conversation and have gotten all the way to the end of it?
I think I would say the future hasn't happened yet. And so it is absolutely ours to collectively shape and influence. And my real hope is that we pursue a future in which human connection is alive and that we use technology to strengthen versus erode that.
Beautifully put. It's been such a delight to speak with you, Michelle. After a long time
Likewise.
coming, thank you so much for
Likewise.
joining us for the Learning Future podcast.
Thank you.